Honestly, I love Spotify. I listen to podcasts on Spotify. In fact, I listen to podcasts on Overcast, on Apple Podcasts, and I listen to podcasts right across the ecosystem. But Spotify, even though I use it every single day, scares me to death. This is a Podcast Accelerator. I'm your host, Mark Asquith, CEO and co-founder of Rebel Base Media, where we make podcasting technology, including the UK's only IAB certified podcast host, Captivate.fm, where you can grab 7 days free podcast hosting and kick the tires of the world's only growth-oriented podcast host at Captivate.fm. Now, I'm going to dig into why I'm scared of Spotify in just 1 second, but before I do that, I need to give you 2 reminders. Numero uno, of course, our free coaching will be available today. In fact, if you're listening to this as it comes out, Friday the 29th of May 2020, I will be live today, 11 a.m. Eastern, in the Facebook group at rebelbasemedia.io/free coaching. We do this every single week, 30 minutes of free, unadulterated podcast coaching from me, Mark Asquith. And also, I need to give a quick shout out to AWeber, who sponsor the Podcast Accelerator. The reason they sponsor the Podcast Accelerator is because we've got to know each other very, very well over the last 7 or 8 years. And they do business like I do business, which is in a very straightforward, very honest, open, transparent, and most importantly, user-focused way. So if you are struggling to build relationships with your podcast audience, if you are struggling for ways to interact with them beyond the download, then all you need to do is start building your loyal email following at markasquith.com/AWeber. You're going to get 30 days free on AWeber, so go and check that out. Now, Spotify. It's brilliant. Honestly, I use it all of the time. And yeah, you can call it out a bit for not displaying show notes properly for podcasts and blah, 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 blah. I get it, and I'm with you. It's not amazing for podcasting, but I listen to podcasts on it. And the reason that I listen to podcasts on it is because every now and again, I want to listen to some music, I want to stick a bit of Jovi on, and then I want to listen to a podcast, and then I want to go back to a bit of Jovi and just completely immerse myself in that 80s hair rock world. But I also use Apple, I use Overcast, I use Google Podcasts. I use them all. It just depends on my mood and where I am. But Spotify scares the crap out of me. Daniel Ek, the CEO of Spotify, has said that he wants to dominate audio, and the only way to dominate everything is by making sure that no one can compete with you. That is surely the very definition of the word domination. And the point here that I'm getting at is that Spotify kind of came into podcasting with very bold and audacious goals, and they are so far beginning to deliver on them by signing Rogan, by obviously acquiring Gimlet, Parcast, Anchor, The Ringer, and a few others, and ultimately, it becomes the destination for audio. And when you compare that against Apple's strategy of exploding iTunes out into Apple Podcasts and Apple TV, fine, that works for their business strategy. It creates a different dynamic in the market to where we had just really 1 or 2 major apps in the marketplace last year. Of course, Google Podcasts continues to push forward ahead with this, but Spotify's domination is audio-centric, not podcast-centric, all right? So what we need to understand with this is that in order for them to do that, and I talked about this before, talked about it on the last episode, and I actually blog posted about this over a year ago, they, as Spotify, don't need us to use RSS. In fact, it would be easier, I think, for them in the future to not use RSS. Just let us log into a portal and upload our audio directly. But that is not open podcasting, and that is what we don't want as podcasters. However, for them, they're adopting a YouTube strategy. They want to control the analytics through their ecosystem. They want to be the people that let us have what we want to have. So, for example, they've opened up their API more recently to allow more analytics to pass through to hosting companies like Captivate. On the surface, it sounds like a great thing. But, if you put a tap on a well, you become the controller of the well. You become the gatekeeper. You become the person that can allow people to have and drink from that well. And it's not always a good thing. And I think Spotify is one of the biggest risks in podcasting right now because their business model requires domination. It requires domination, all right? So our job as podcasters and as the industry is to obviously make ourselves available to users wherever the users want to be able to listen to us. And this is one of the biggest challenges that Spotify, to its credit, knows that it has over us, is that it has a great user base. It has some serious marketing clout. It's got some serious brand dollars to invest in marketing, and it can attract new podcast listeners. Because it can intersperse, listen to Bruce Springsteen on this podcast after you've listened to Bruce Springsteen as an album. You know, it can do things like that other people can't do. And it does get my mum listening. It does get my mates listening. And it gets me discovering new things. But it's dangerous. You know, we live in a time where people could come into listening to podcasts and never, ever, ever touch a new podcast app. They could just use Spotify and never touch anything else. And this is why I'm scared of it, all right? Because to me, they want to put a wall up around podcasting. And I do believe, like I talked about on the last episode, we've got to get over calling a podcast, whether it's delivered via RSS or not. No one cares about that. On-demand audio is on-demand audio. It is what it is, all right? So, the point is that there will always be a very large faction of people that want podcasting to remain open. And believe me, I am one of them. I am devout when it comes to this. I want RSS to grow. Okay, and I want it to remain open and democratic, and I want people to be able to access it wherever they want to access it, and I want people to be able to create in a way that they want to create, okay? I want this to remain the same. However, I'm not naive enough to believe that Spotify is not looking to make so much money from podcasting that creating a walled garden, similar to what Luminary has tried to do, is not on their agenda, and even going so far as to make the publishing process, theoretically, and I'm doing this in big air quotes, easier, and it really is in air quotes that. It is in air quotes because that's subjective, all right? I'm not naive enough to believe that they won't come out saying, well, you can just publish direct to Spotify. You know, here's the easiest way to podcast. Forget about the other guys. Shush, we don't need to talk about them. Just record up using this app, which is, oh, look at that, conveniently called Anchor. And you can publish exclusively to Spotify where the biggest demographics are and the biggest users and blah, blah, blah. You know, this is a marketing angle that Spotify eventually will be able to take. And it becomes then the walled garden. So they're having two bites at the cherry. They're having the kind of independence, they're having the indies and the creators and the open nature of things because they have Anchor and they have podcasters on there, but they're also walled gardening it by putting Rogan on there, putting other exclusives on there. And the fact of the matter is that this is only just begun, and I can see podcasting fracturing. I can see us having this very vast majority of people that are still open and that will never move away from a Captivate-style podcast host because it's RSS and it's podcasting as it is. But I can see the walled gardens becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, all right? So what I just wanted to do with this episode is just make you aware that sometimes when someone gives you something, it can be short-term good, but long-term, not so good. It's back to that example that I talked about. You know, Spotify starting to trickle out more data via their own API is like them putting a tap on a well that everyone else should be able to drink from, but they control the tap, all right? Where does this end? Where does this end? You know, we've all seen Revenge of the Sith. We know what happens, all right? It all goes a little bit wrong. The Republic goes pear-shaped, and it takes a long, long time for balance to be restored. Is podcasting having its empire moment? Who knows? But I believe that we are on the path towards it, all right? So again, just a bit of a rant. It's been one of those weeks this week. You know, there's been a lot going on, so thanks for bearing with me on this one. I appreciate you letting me rant to you. And, you know, it's what I do. I live podcasting, breathe podcasting every single day. You know, if 10,000 hours makes you an expert, then, oh, God, I'm like Mr. Miyagi. You know, I don't know what that makes some of the older people in podcasting. I mean, who's Mr. Miyagi's master? I don't know. If anyone knows the name of Miyagi's master, hit me up on Twitter, at Mr. Asquith. All right, well, listen, thanks for joining me. It really has been a great, great pleasure to chat to you and just let me rant on like this. I appreciate you letting me do this. So until the next time, thanks for joining me. I'll see you on the free coaching a little bit later, 11 a.m. Eastern at rebelbasemedia.io/free coaching. And never, ever forget, the more you expect from yourself, the more you will excel.